Have you ever wanted to flex on everyone in ToA? Outlast your entire team in health and supplies? Or maybe you just want to sharpen your skills and push yourself to the limit? Either way, this guide is for you. My name is JasperJax. Sit back, relax, and let me show you exactly how to chomp skip and scream skip Zebak at any raid level. First thing to note, I don't expect either of these to become the meta. It would be quite silly if they did, as neither of these are crucial to the raid. Chomp Skip is helpful for saving some prayer for your entire team and allowing teammates to have a second to breathe between attacks. I wouldn't expect you to ever use this mechanic solo unless you're just practicing, or maybe you run out of prayer and it's an absolute must to complete the room. Scream Skip is actually quite useful to know in case you or somebody else messes up the jugs in Zebak. This allows you to avoid 100% damage from his screen. But you'd want to note that you'll be taking a bit of damage from stepping on the poison 3 times, so make sure your HP is high before performing this action. Now, I will be adding timestamps to this YouTube video for your convenience, so make sure to check that out if you'd like to skip to a specific section within this guide. Now let's go ahead and start off with the Chomp Skip. Let's talk about Zebak's melee range, and more important, where not to stand while the Chomp Skip is being performed. The screenshot breaks it down. The red tiles are your chomp trigger zones. This is where the skipper needs to stand to bait Zebak into a melee attack. Everybody already knows not to stand here. The yellow tiles are what I call the danger zone. These are the 2 rows directly in front of Zebak within his melee radius. But here's the catch. If anyone is standing on a yellow tile, Zebak becomes way less likely to perform a chomp attack at all. In other words, don't stand here. Ever. Because if somebody managed to trigger a chomp while you're standing here, you'll regret it and blame them, and believe me, it was your fault for standing there in the first place. Then we've got the orange tiles. Technically safe from damage, but they mess with Zebak's behavior in the same way as the danger zone. Standing here still interferes with the chomp trigger for some reason. Maybe it's to prevent friendly fire during melee specs, but bottom line, avoid these 2. Finally, the green tiles. These are the only tiles that are completely safe. You won't get chomped and you won't disrupt the skip. If you're not the one performing the skip, stay on the green tiles or stay out of the way entirely. Any tiles outside of this box marked on screen is safe as well, feel free to stand there. Now that you know the zones, let's go over how to actually trigger a chomp skip step by step. When to trigger a chomp skip depends on the level of Zebak. In this example right here, we are a level 0 Zebak, so it's every 7 ticks before his enrage phase. Once you reach his enrage phase, it's every 4 ticks. To know what tick to start on is quite difficult to learn and to explain, which is why I'm going to be repeating the same clip over and over. Again, it does depend on Zebak's level, but essentially you want to click into the chomp trigger zone right as Zebak is deciding what attack to use, and immediately clicking out as your true tile moves to the chomp trigger zone. For level 0 Zebak, once you hear his projectile explode in air, you'll wait 1 tick, or for the projectile to be about halfway to you. If you watch the visual metronome right above my character's head, the projectile explodes at tick 2, and I click in at tick 3 and immediately click back at tick 4. I'd then click back in at tick 3 again and repeat over and over again. I can do this because my visual metronome is set to 7, which is the tick cycle it takes for a level 0 Zebak that's not enraged. Now for the enrage phase, again, it's a 4 tick cycle for a level 0 Zebak. Essentially, you'll click in every time Zebak throws a projectile out of his mouth. For this example, I reset the visual metronome back to 4 ticks, since this is a 4 tick cycle. And as you can see, I'm clicking in at tick 4 and clicking back out at tick 1. I did mess up at the beginning of this clip as I clicked in too late. Now you'll see me recover it and click back in at 4 and back out at 1, and it'll trigger the chomp skip. I do it again and it doesn't trigger the chomp skip. This is because it's not a guarantee to trigger the chomp skip, it just gives him the chance to trigger it. So keep that in mind whenever you're learning. If it's not triggering every time, especially if you're using the visual metronome and you believe you're going in and out at the right ticks, just try it a couple of times to see if you can get him to trigger at all. And if you do, then you are on the right tick cycle. You just need to continue with it, as sometimes it won't always trigger. This guide will be skipping to level 2 Zebak, since level 0 and level 1 are the same tick speed. Level 2 and Level 3 Zebak are also the same tick speed at 6 ticks for normal and 3 ticks for enrage. You'll want to click into the Chomp trigger zone right as the projectile explodes in air, then immediately back to safety. Here is a slow motion clip to help you learn. As you may have noticed, I adjusted my visual metronome plugin to a 6 tick cycle since that's Level 2 Zebak's normal attack speed. Now you'll be able to clearly see that I am clicking into his zone at tick 4 and back to safety at tick 5. Now I'll show you this clip again without editing or a voiceover, so that way you can watch it for yourself in real time and hopefully be able to repeat the process. Now, for level 2 and 3 Enraged Zebak, it's a 3 tick cycle. As you may have noticed, I adjusted my visual metronome to help easily showcase the tick cycle. Once you begin attempting the Chomp Skip at higher levels of Zebak, things become much more intense and fast paced. This clip does a wonderful job highlighting what I said before about how even if you enter and exit at the correct time, it's only a chance to trigger his melee attack and not a guarantee. So at higher levels, don't be discouraged because this isn't working flawlessly like you see in some of my clips. At level 2 and 3 Enrage, it is still possible to stay in perfect Chomp Skip cycle while attacking Zebak, though it will require a good bit of practice. Here's another example that I'll go ahead and turn into a slow motion clip so that way we can slow it down and discuss exactly what's happening. For a level 2 Enraged, once Zebak's mouth is fully open sending a projectile, you'll want to click into his Chomp Skip range and then directly back out to safety, and it should trigger the Chomp Skip. If performing this Chomp Skip correctly on a level 2 or 3 Enraged phase, you do have enough time to click into his melee range, back to safety, and as soon as you see your true tile touch the safe tile, immediately click to attack and then go straight back into his melee chomp range. You cannot delay waiting for your attack though, or else you'll mess up. Now level 4 Zebak is where things get a bit crazy. His normal phase is a 5 tick cycle, while his enraged phase is a 2 tick cycle, meaning you do not have any room for mistakes. So let's slow this down. His normal phase is quite straightforward to perform while attacking. Once the projectile explodes in air, you'll click into his melee range and then immediately click back to safety and attack. Within this clip, I'm clicking within his melee range on tick 5 and immediately clicking back on tick 1, and then repeating this process over and over to continue to perform the Chomp Skip for yourself or your team. Now once again, I'll let this play out in real time without a voiceover. As mentioned, Zebak's Enrage phase on level 4 is absolute insanity. Much worse than actual insanity. He's on a 2 tick attack cycle, meaning if you plan to Chomp Skip, you'll be sacrificing your own DPS, allowing your teammates to do all of the damage while you attempt to trigger as many chomps as you possibly can to limit how many projectiles are being thrown. Doing this successfully even one time could be enough to save a teammate's life. So let's go ahead and dive straight into the slow motion clip to play it out. As you can see from this clip, you'll click into his melee range once he starts to turn his head, gearing to throw a projectile, or right as soon as the projectile damages your character. You'll click into his melee range on tick 2 and immediately back out on tick 1, then repeat. As mentioned, this leaves you absolutely no room for you to be able to attack. So you'll need to have friends capable of doing damage unless you want to mess with a more complex strategy which involves using thralls. I will not be covering that, as even for me it's incredibly hard to perform consistently. Now this clip is slowed down to 20% of its normal speed in hopes you're able to clearly identify something you can use for yourself to get the rhythm down. With all that said, I'll go ahead and allow this clip to play out without any editing or voiceover. Now some tips about performing the Chomp Skip. First, you should only perform the Chomp Skip when it is safe to do so. It is not common knowledge yet, therefore most people think standing in the danger zone is completely acceptable, as the danger zone by itself will never trigger a melee attack, and they're likely trying to get as close to Zebak as possible to close the gap between their projectile and the boss. They're not doing it to be rude to you, they're doing it because they're not knowledgeable about this tech, so share this video. Another thing to look out for is if somebody is going in for a melee spec on Zebak. Second, your life and your DPS matters. Don't perform the Chomp Skip if you cannot actively do it while attacking and swapping prayers when needed for missed chomps and blood magic, with the exception of level 4 Enrage phase, as that's specifically to help struggling teammates as you cannot do any DPS yourself. Lastly, as mentioned at the start of this video and my short form video, performing the Chomp Skip is almost never necessary. The only situations I can imagine that somebody might need to perform the Chomp Skip is when they're incredibly low on supplies, taking too much damage during an Enrage phase, or to soothe their ADHD brain like me. Moving on to the Scream Skip. As mentioned, the Scream Skip is actually quite useful to know, especially if you frequently raid with a team. This becomes increasingly useful when completing the ToA rooms starting with Baba, Kefri, Akka, then Zebak. Now, unlike the Chomp Skip, the Scream Skip doesn't seem to matter what level Zebak is, it is always the same. You'll utilize the Scream Skip whenever you or somebody in your raid messes up the jugs. To perform the Scream Skip, you'll wait for Zebak's left foot to raise off the ground and set back down. Then, you'll click behind the pillar and back out 3 times. You'll take roughly 65 damage performing this, which is much better than dying, teleporting, or using a yellow Karis. After learning the Scream Skip, I have never failed this mechanic once, as it is incredibly easy to perform, but I'll go ahead and put it in slow motion anyways. Once you've found a tile max 2 tiles away with run energy enabled, wait for Zebak's left foot to raise up and set back down. Once you see his foot set back down, you'll click behind the pillar and back out 3 times. 1 tick per tile, just like level 4 Zebak's Enraged phase. And that's the Zebak Chomp and Scream Skip nailed down. Clean, controlled, and honestly kind of fun once you get it. Master it and you'll find yourself skipping half the chaos and shredding through Zebak like a pro. Next up, we're taking it to Wardens, floor skipping, 2-tiling, and bending that whole room to your will. But for now, go run some raids and get those purples, like this one. Don't forget to like the subscribe button and follow the bell.